Welcome to Top to Bottom Male Romance Podcast, where we celebrate all things male romance. I am Jessica.
And I'm Markie.
And this is our October bottom episode.
Yes, before we get into all the fun things, I bet you know what I'm about to say. We have reader groups. We have one on Facebook and one on Goodreads. You could jump in at any time and tell us about your favorite things you've been reading, a cool series that you've gotten into recently, fun TV show you found, anything related to romance or general silliness. You can jump in and talk to us about it there. We also have a Patreon. Our patrons get inside information about upcoming interviews that we have lined up and get a chance to submit questions to said interview person. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out, make sure you do so.
And if you haven't done so, make sure you rate us on whatever it is you listen to us on. It helps other people find us too.
Woo!
Real quick, if you listen to our previous episodes, you know that we are doing a little something different because this is GRL month as well as other ridiculous stuff for us, Halloween and other good stuff that takes up so much time. So we super pre-recorded. By the time you listen to this, GRL would have happened, but we are going to do probably a big focus on GRL for our November tops. So we're not going to talk too much about it. We've probably already posted stuff on Facebook and maybe Goodreads if you check us out on there. But stay tuned for next week when we actually really dig into our GRL experience.
Yeah. I apologize in advance. We'll probably be pretty obnoxious about it because, like we mentioned on the previous episode, this is the first year Jess is going. First year I'm going to be an author there. So I'm sure I have plenty to talk about. It's going to be super fun.
Yes, so if you want to hear all about those shenanigans, stay tuned next month, and we will fill you in on that.
Before we super dive into our tops, I wanted to bring up there is a new romance podcast that I just heard about, and it is called...
Just heard about when we recorded this at the beginning of October, so right. Sorry, it's a little bit late news.
Exactly. So as of today, I know about this podcast, but this is going to be in the future, so it's been out for like a month, so super sorry. But there's a new romance podcast called Author Podcast that's hosted by Slade James. As of this recording, he's got 4 episodes out. He's got like a prologue episode where he basically just talks about who he is and his career as like an author and a radio personality and stuff, what got him into doing the show and all that good stuff. And then he actually has a couple interviews lined up. He interviews Lucy Lennox, Lily Morton, and somebody else. I know Nev Wilder is on the docket to be interviewed, so I'm looking forward to hearing that because when this airs, I would have met her in person, like a fancy person. But we've been following Nev. She was one of our Fresh Bananas like last year, so it'll be cool to actually get to hear her being interviewed on a podcast, which is going to be super fun. So if you haven't checked it out, definitely do so. I'll make sure to post a link in the show notes so you can check it out.
Awesome.
So what we did on our last episode, just like Jess said, we did our top 5 favorite couples. So this time we're going to do another top 5 list, and we are doing tropes.
Wow, you just said it like you spell it.
What? It's tropes. That's what I said, right?
It sounded like you said troops.
No, I said tropes.
You said it all high pitched.
Okay. Leave this in. I'm super bad about this shit. We emailed Lucy Lennox about like her interview questions, and I asked her what her favorite trope is, and I spelled it as troop. So editors are important, everybody. But yes, tropes. We're talking about tropes, not troops.
Yes. Again, with this one, I don't really have an order to my ranking. These are just my 5 favorite. I also have honorable mentions, and I know that some of these are going to be overlapping with some of yours. The only rule we have inflicted on this is that we are looking at relationship-based tropes. So we aren't, looking at subgenres or, moods or whatever. We're looking at relationship tropes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Because if we were doing subgenres, which would be a great list, we'll have to do that at some point. They could be very, very similar. So we had to make sure to put like strict parameters on what tropes are in this context.
How do you want to kick it off?
I think you went first on the last one, so I'll go first on this one. Shocking to no one of my all-time favorite tropes is enemies to lovers.
Me too!
Hey! It's like we're best friends or something. Enemies to lovers is just like how it sounds. The couple start out hating each other and then eventually fall into either smoopy, ridiculous love or hate fucking and then love. Like, there's a lot of flavors that go into that. Of course, some of my favorite examples of such would be Cut and Run, the series. And then Love in Spades by Charlie Cochet is a great example of enemies to lovers. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I have on my list of enemies to lovers, Cut and Run, Beautiful Monsters, Captive Prince, Drag Queen and the Homo Jock King from TJ Klune, fucking great. And on this list, only like if I'm picking one per author, I also included claw marks and card games for an enemies to level, because it's definitely a great one because they hate each other at the beginning. That's a Mathematics original, so
Well,
the second in the series. It's great. Yeah. So yeah, it's super fun because you have that chemistry. I mean, to really dislike somebody like that, there's some kind of chemistry, and it doesn't always, bloom into something like love or anything like that. But when it does, holy crap, it's super great.
Yeah, well, and it's especially if they're like rivals or something to where they're just really at each other's throats for whatever reason. It's you already have that powerful draw to that person because they just get under your fucking skin. And I think one of the reasons I relate to it so much is because my real life husband is that. Like I don't hate him, but like he's the only person that can just get to me more than anyone else. Like he knows how to push buttons nobody else can do because I'm madly in love with the asshole. Like that's just how this stuff works.
Yeah. I just like watching the sparks fly and the, seeing that reluctant acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's just something.
Oh, there's something totally magical about that because they go from like when they have that internal dialogue of like, I hate this guy. Why is he so hot? Just like it's great. I love that shit. I eat it up. So I would dare say that probably is my number one, even though these aren't like particularly ranked, but that one is number one for me as enemies to lovers.
Oh god. So I don't know because I have three others that are like battling enemies to lovers for a favorite, and then I actually had several honorable mentions that make it as my fifth is the way I'm going to go with that.
Oh, you have a fifth that has multiples?
Yes.
You're such a shit. That is not what we agreed on.
Well, yeah, I know, but my guess is that some of these might overlap with yours, and
yeah,
I'm banking on it.
100%. Well, it's like we run a podcast together. We clearly have shit in common as far as our tastes in books, but I think there are some that like I'll like more than you, and that kind of stuff. But in general, we have pretty similar tastes.
Yep. So I'm gonna go with so hard to pick which one's next. But again, these are not ranked in any particular order, really. So next, I'm gonna bring up Slow Burn.
Slow Burn is one of mine.
Shocking. Almost, for the same reason as Enemies to Lovers is that in a kind of its own way, really though, is watching the build up and feeling the chemistry build up between point A to point F, as we'll call it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of good ones. What are some of your favorites?
I wrote Captive Prince because I think that one is my top tier slow burn because it takes them 3 books to like actually end up together, like for real end up together. So that is like king of slow burn. But I would also lump in How to Be a Normal Person as slow burn because that one, their relationship has to build up so much because of who they are as characters. So getting to see the really organic way that this relationship happens because I love people jumping into bed quickly as much as the next person. Like there's a reason we like him in romance. It can get pretty saucy pretty fast, but when it's that wonderful build up and then when it finally happens, when they finally just have that first kiss, you're like falling over yourself at that point. So it's sometimes can be hard because I'm so spoiled with everyone just be like, no, just kiss already, goddammit. So, yeah.
Oh man, I love the buildup. I almost want to say I love the buildup more than any kind of instant connection because it almost feels like it's more earned that way. The other, I also have How to Be a Normal Person on my list for that. Captive Prince. I'm sorry, I do have Captive Prince on this list, but I meant BMO, Captive.
Yeah, Captive.
Beautiful Monsters is definitely a slow burn because that's an ongoing thing at this point. 3 books in.
Yep.
And then I just put Green Creek because both Wolfsong and Ravensong have more Wolfsong because that was a decades long thing.
Yep.
Ravensong is more second chance, I think, but yeah, those are all fantastic slow burns. Oh, and I have Dominus on that list too because
that's super slow burn.
super slow burn. Yeah. What's next?
Another one of mine is Awakening Sexuality.
That's one of my honorable mentions.
Hey, there you go. So of course, the one that got me into that genre is Try. Ella Frank.
Yes, that's on my list.
Yeah, that is the antithesis of awakening sexuality, because Tate is, it takes Logan to really show him that side of himself at all, as at least from that how she wrote the book, right? And it's that book is not a slow burn, but it's like
No.
it is the opposite. But it's so good, man. It's so well written, and I'm not going to gush about Try. We have a whole fucking episode about that, but that trope is so good and well done, and I like exploring sexuality in characters. Like, it's, if you're reading romance, clearly they're going to get to the point where they're hooking up with another dude, but I like the representation of the LGBTQ spectrum, which is awesome. But it's got such a draw to it, because usually the characters are very reluctant, and just like maybe a side of them that they repressed, or something that they didn't want to admit, or something that they've always been scared to try, if you will. Never not funny. So it's one of my all-time favorites. I really like it.
Awesome. The other one I have on my list that was sexual awakening was Red, White, and Royal Blue from Casey McQuiston.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're dealing with a character that, like, the main character that is the protagonist, he thinks he's straight. Well, maybe I think he knew he wasn't, but like it definitely was a shock to everybody else when he wasn't. So
Yeah.
Also super really well written. I enjoyed the hell out of that one too. Just watching the acceptance of it, because you're dealing with somebody who's the first son, right? So your mom's the president, and your entire life is under a microscope, and you have to, and it's like, right, going for her second term, right? So it's election time, and every little thing is scrutinized. So he has to decide how he's gonna handle this new bit of himself, if it's going to affect his family, like in the biggest of ways. And anyways, it was a really good one.
Yeah, it sounds really good. I'm gonna have to read it at some point. We'll have to make that like an official bottom, because we did that as a summer reading thing. So Jess read it while I was reading other stuff, but that one has gotten praised all around, and you love it, which means of course it's good. So
turn, I guess.
Yes, your turn.
Forced proximity.
Oh, that's a good one. I don't have that one on mine.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
For the same, I mean, like enemies to lovers, almost it has a pretty thick Venn diagram with forced proximity, I think. But I have my obvious ones on here, but there's so many others that I've done. I've got Beautiful Monsters, Dominus, and Captive Prince all on here, because obviously those are definite forced proximity. But then you have like, was it Love and Spades?
Yeah. He was his bodyguard, so they had to be like right next to each other all the time.
Yeah, and that was a Charlie Cochet. And I mean, really, a lot of these kind of end up being that, where you have, let's see, I mentioned earlier, the drag queen and the homo jock king, they force themselves into having to be, they're going to close down the drag bar, and they have to join forces to try to convince the homo jock king's very conservative mayor or governor, I don't remember which, mayor, I think, father, to do something to help them save the bar. Anyways, they force themselves into that situation to save the drag bar.
That's excellent.
It is so good, man. You have got to read these. But anyways, but yeah, I love that, because you have, it's a lot of times the enemies to lovers thing, right? Because they don't want to be together, but they are, and it's great, and I loves it.
It is really good. It's really good. When we were picking these tropes, it's insanely hard to narrow down, and a lot of these do usually go hand in hand, like forced proximity and enemies to lovers, because how else are you going to get these two to fall in love together if they hate each other? So forcing them into the snowed in cabin, if you will, like it helps that relationship bloom. So
yep. What else you got?
So I have one that I don't know what the technical term is, but somebody coined it this way, so it's now one of my favorite. The grumpy one is soft for the sunshine one. Like Ash and Kale, basically. Like the super gruff, mean, hard as nails character is soft for the like super sweet guy, So like Gus and Casey. He's not a hard ass, but he's Gus, right? Like he's grumpy Gus. But Casey's the sunshine. He's wonderful, a little stoner guy. He's so happy, and like this is a safe space. It's a shared space. So it's like I love that trope, and if there's not a term for it, the grumpy one is soft for the sunshine one is now what it is forever going to be called. Like, because it's a meme right now, and I'm like, every time I see it, I'm like, yeah, I love that. My examples were Ash and Kale, and then Zero at the Bone is very much that, because D, we talked about it in our previous episode, D is like this just super badass dude, and Jack is like this sweet guy, and that's what made me realize I like that genre. Like that's what got me into that. I was like, oh my god, I love the hard ass loves the sunshine. Like that's such a big deal for me. So yes, one of my all-time favorites.
Sweet. So my next one is not specifically to the relationship, the one-on-one relationship, but the relationship that they have with others. One of my all-time favorite tropes in anything I read is found family.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
And that's such a big deal in the LGBTQ community because so many of the blood family are assholes or just unavailable or whatever. And found family is important, I think, in all walks of life, not just in LGBTQ, but it hits harder, I think, here because a lot of times that's all there is. I have a lot of TJ Klune on this list. Because that's kind of like the ensemble cast that's in every TJ Klune series is almost always a found family situation. Gail Carriger does that quite a bit as well. The San Andreas Shifter series is very much so you have werewolves, and so I think just the two of them are brother. Everybody, like only two of them are related, like blood related. The rest of them are just members of their pack that come from other places. Yeah, they're werewolves and they have that in common, but it's not just them. They have the Kitsune and the Kelpie and like all of these other people, and of course the humans and stuff that hang around. So all of these people that are just there because that's where their tribe is. I mean, you really kind of get that in a lot of these books as well, but those are the standouts for me, and I think probably why I find myself drifting towards anything that both Gail and TJ write is because that found family trope it's like a warm blanket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a super good one. We recently talked to Lucy Lennox about it too. Like the Wild family's giant, but she puts a big emphasis on found family because it's such a big deal. And like you said, especially within the LGBTQ community, because a lot of times, like, unfortunately, that's the only family that some people get is because the other ones decide to be assholes. So it's a good one. It's a very, very good trope and something I hope stays forever. I love that trope.
Well, and it goes beyond that too. And I think because like I don't really have a lot of blood family, like I pretty much just have my mom, but I have a very, very large family when it comes to my chosen family, and it's like almost unruly and just as dysfunctional and wonderful as anybody might, any blood family could be. So I think that might also be part of why that hits closer to home. It's just you choose the people you surround yourself with, and that's because those are the ones that build you up and hide the bodies for you and whatnot.
Exactly. So the other, I've got two left. One of them was an overlap, slow burn. So I only have one left, really. And that's going to be secret romance, which...
Oh, I love that. Yes.
Yeah, which, I mean, kind of falls into the forced proximity and, enemies to lovers typically. But a good example of that is the Enemies of the State series by Tal Bauer. Love that one. That one was kind of like Red, White, and Royal Blue. The president falls for his bodyguard, like a Secret Service guy. And holy shit, that was so good. Like, it was such a good taboo thing because they had to keep it purely secret. And, like, if it got out, it'd be a big scandal. And it was just this whole thing. And, like, the whole time, especially with secret romances, you're on the edge of your seat because you're like, oh shit, at some point, somebody's going to find out. Otherwise, that wouldn't be a plot, right? Like, it's going to break loose. And I do and don't want it to happen. And, like, at certain points, you're, like, biting your fist, like, oh no, just it's get your heart going. So I really like secret romances.
Yeah, those are awesome. Yeah, Red, White, and Royal Blue, the love interest was the Prince of Wales. So super had to be secret.
Yeah.
Yeah. All I really had left was my honorable mentions at this point. I have Coming of Age, so Simon versus the Homo Sapien Agenda and Straight Boy were both really great. So just dealing with it in those formative, late teenage years, dealing with your sexuality and your friends and everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
That those are just, I don't know, I think everybody kind of loves a good coming of age story. And
oh yeah, those are timeless.
Yeah. And then the other one I have is okay, I have to emphasize this, super consensual kink. Where it is very clearly laid out that this is the kink and there are rules and everything like that. And my examples of that are Omega Objection from Gail Carriger and then Leo's Lion from Andy James and Lila Wilde.
Yeah. That was a great example of consensual stuff. Like the entire relationship was built on that for the Leona's line. I mean, they both are, but like Leona's line was especially like, we're in a kink club. Here's how this shit works. And I appreciate that and love it. There's nothing sexier than consent. Like that is
Right,
such a big turn on for me.
Yeah, I have such a hard time with non-con. I don't completely rule it out because I've seen it done in ways that don't irk me or whatever, they don't weird me out. And that's cool. I mean, there's always exceptions to the rule, but like seeing it done where it's like super playing by the rules and being completely respectful. And I know that seems like wet noodle to like lay it out like that, but
No,
it's
not.
so great.
Yeah,
It helps me enjoy what's going on, and like just while I'm reading it, I don't feel weird about it. Like I don't feel like, I don't know, uncomfortable for enjoying a thing, you know?
Yeah, no, there's definitely something to that, and of course, just as a caveat here, we're not throwing shade on people who like non-con,
Not
done
at
con
all.
kind of stuff, because that's legit. I get it. It's like Jess said, there's definitely exceptions to the rules. Guns and Boys is a good example of that, but like,
Yeah, that's a great example
it
because
really is. They did a great
I
job
would
with that.
I would think that would normally make me feel super, super uncomfortable, but I didn't. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, it was great. So like you can do it well, but it's all about your comfort zone, right? Like there's some people who absolutely just cannot read that. Other people where they're like, man, that's my jam, and that's thumbs up, dude. We're totally valid. I totally get you. I'm with you. I prefer it to be like to the point where the character's like, hey, you cool? Yeah, dude, I'm good. You sure? Yep. Like, I love that shit. It's important. I think we should normalize the hell out of it. And especially within the kink community, it's something that is like a 101 kind of thing. Like, the first thing you learn when you get into that lifestyle in that community is that they do not put up with non-consensual shit, and I love it. I think that's great. And it kind of puts you more in the moment because you know everyone's all on the same terms and you can really lean into it pretty hard and enjoy what the scene is, what the kink is, and it's good times, man. I love it.
Agreed. But yeah, that's my list.
It's a good list. We only had like 3 overlap. I'm very surprised.
Only 3 out of 5. And the other ones we both completely agreed with.
I know. Well, like, I don't even know what I'd do if I was like this, and you're like, nah, dude, nah. Like, I just don't feel like we've ever like, we've had certain tropes that I'm like, well, I don't mind this, and you're like, ugh. But for the most part, we're pretty on par.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to doing more of these. It's fun to talk about the stuff we like. I'm pretty sure that's why we started the podcast.
Indeed. And I really hope that we're able to communicate with you, the lovely listener, about y'all's favorite tropes and couples and other tops that you'd like to talk about, because this is fun. Like, this is bringing up the GRL thing again. This is one of the reasons why we like going to events like GRL and connecting with people, because we get to talk to people who also love this shit as much as we do. We can just talk about tropes for 30 minutes. Like, it's great. So we'd love to hear y'all's favorites and some good suggestions on what we can do next.
Absolutely. So next month, we'll kind of get a little bit back on to what you're used to. We'll do, this is now, again, unless you guys tell us that you super hate it, which I hope you don't, but if you tell us you hate it, we'll stop. But we will likely do a top for our November top, and we'll probably talk about our top 3 favorite moments of GRL or something along those lines, and we'll catch up on all of the things that at least a snippet of the things that we experienced at GRL and how that went, and we will announce our November bottom pick at that time.
Indeed. So I guess we will see you guys at the beginning of November. I hope you had a fantastic October and a great Halloween, and we'll see you then.
Yep, bye!